In a quiet field in Normandy, under an expansive sky that seemed to stretch into infinity, one solitary figure lay huddled amidst his parachute and rucksacker lone sentinel awaiting dawn's first light, which would herald the arrival of hopeful hearts. This man was a member of Company E within the 101st Airborne Division, an American soldier with eyes that spoke volumes about courage, yet had not seen his comrades for hours since their harrowing drop behind enemy lines during D-Day's prelude to liberation. As night enveloped him in its cool embrace and the stars blinked sleepily overhead, he found solace only within memories of camaraderie or shared mission that promised a new dawn for freedom from tyranny's grasp. His breathing was deep, and even against his chest's tightening grip with each silent exhale, the rhythmic thud-thud, echoed by distant gunfire on occasion when it chose to whisper rather than wail through the French countryside, seemed a gentle reminder of both danger lurking and purpose driving him forward. The weight in his backpack felt like an anchor tethering him firmly not just to the physical ground, but also to the mission he held sacred, his own heartbeat synchronizing with each pound against his shoulders, as if acknowledging a silent covenant between man, nature, and destiny. Despite feeling lost amidst such uncertainty in this vast open space, where night's darkness seemed infinite before it could surrender itself to daylight's gentle caress, he had the comforting click-clack of an electronic cricket device humming within his pocket, her small beacon against solitude and disorientation. The sound served as a constant companion in this unsettling quietude, its metallic tones cutting through silence like delicate yet determined notes on strings strung by invisible puppeteers orchestrating movements of search, find, and rescue operations to reunite him with his brothers at arms. He longed for the muffled clamor and cacophony that once surrounded them, the rattle of weapons as they leaped from planes into an uncertain night sky above Normandy. Their synchronized parachute deployment like clockwork against backdrops painted in hues only dreamt about by those who had never dared to leave the safety beneath. He recalled that fateful moment when he jumped out of a C-47 Skytrainer, monstrous bird soaring above, seeming both invincible and terrifying as it delivered men into enemy territory with precision born from countless hours spent in preparation under the guidance of generals who whispered strategies like secrets shared among old friends. But now here he was, alone but for a few trusty gadgets that had become more extensions of his own body than mere tools, and this night's silence seemed to wrap around him as one might envelop themselves in an embrace or cloak against the elements outside their control, only constant companion amidst change. As time trickled onward like grains through hourglass sand that felt suspended between nowhere and somewhere, with every tick marking a pulse of heartbeat racing within his chest, he thought about what lay ahead in search for survival, not just physical but emotional as well, lost stung sharply when friends became mere memories echoed through recollection's corridor. He felt the weight upon him growing heavier with each passing moment, until it seemed like an unbearable burden to shoulder alone in this vast expanse of green and blue, his spirit aching from both fatigue and disconnection within ranks, yet yearning for unity among men whose faces had been blurred by shadows cast between darkness. But then he heard the faint patter-patter as crickets began their nightly symphony or chorus that seemed almost mockingly cheerful compared to his own solitary existence in this lonely field amidst a sea of greenery reaching for skies painted by twilight's final brushstroke before sunrise. He smiled briefly, allowing himself the luxury as only soldiers could afford when their lives depended on such small moments that felt larger than life itself, a reminder to hold onto hope and courage while embracing vulnerability beneath moonlit eyes gazed back at him from across this no-man's land between warfare's chaos. He closed his heavy eyelids, allowing himself a brief reprieve before the world demanded attention once more. He allowed thoughts of family or wife who would worry until she heard tidings about her husband. He sighed heavily as he closed his eyes and concentrated on steadying himself for another day in this foreign-lander place, where every morning seemed to bring with it an unspoken challenge, a silent battle that raged not only between opposing forces but within the very souls of those who lived through its trials. The sun's warmth had been nothing more than memory since his arrival weeks ago. Yet, even in this newfound chill as night embraced daylight, and he found himself alone beneath a sky now dotted with stars, there was comfort to be taken from the quiet that surrounded him or hushed, punctuated only by cricket's gentle symphony. Their song had always been his lullaby back home in England. It hummed softly through the air as if trying its best not to disturb, but merely exist alongside rustling leaves and distant hoots of owls that kept vigil over these fields at nightfall, guardianship passed down from generations before him. It was an ancient melody woven into his spirit, her comforting whisper, even in this unfamiliar time when the world seemed to spin too fast for comprehension or control, and life's rhythm had shifted irrevocably underfoot like quicksilver slipping through fingers that grasp at threads of reality. His thoughts often wandered back across the English Channel where his family awaited a wife who would knit with needles clicking in time to her husband's heartbeat, children whose laughter was as melodious and comforting as any song he had ever known or been a part of. She worried for him relentlessly until she heard tidings about his safety. It warmed the chill that sometimes found its way into this soldier's bones to know they would still be there, waiting on homecoming rainbows and whispered tales where he could return unscathed after battles fought not just with weapons, but will. But here in these fields of endless green stretching toward the heavens her canvas for twilight's final masterpiece before nightfall deepened into a blanket heavy with stars and dreams, found solace as he allowed himself to drift upon waves of memories that came crashing through like tidal surges, washing over him even if just fleetingly. They carried away the pain from loss, felt when friends fell side by side for freedom's sake or loved ones left behind in this world without them. Yet they also brought forth a mosaic made up of every sun or zero one as dawn approached with its slow ascent. He would find himself reaching towards it, her silent salute to the day that promised another round upon which his heart and hope were wagered against uncertainty. With each new light came renewal, even if brief encounters could fracture camaraderie or leave him yearning for a sense of belonging in places where no man's land stretched between ideals. The sunrise was always consistent, or promise kept by ancient timekeepers that night would end and day begin anew. He closed his eyes once more as if to seal away thoughts until they could be revisited with a fresh eye at another hour's start, or return home for one last look before the next departure call echoed through these fields, summoning him back into service, where he would continue this cycle of longing and resilience. For now, as night deepened to its most profound quietude, his breathing slowed until it mirrored that steady tempo only found in places free from human turmoil or cadence shared with crickets, whose chorus underscored the natural world's continuity despite mankind's ephemeral struggles. Within this solitude and under a sky of infinite stories, he allowed himself to be momentarily transported back through time or space as needed, a soldier not just fighting for his country but navigating life beyond battlefields where the heart's strength often wavered beneath layers of fear, courage, loss, and love. As sleep took him with its soft whispering call under starlit skies, while crickets still serenaded into slumber along with an old soldier far from home in a time when history was being written by those who dared to dream amidst the din of war's relentless drumbeat. As he lay in his cot beneath a canvas roof that mimicked an open sky on this warm summer night, Thomas felt each thread of fabric wrap around him like fingers seeking solace from their owner's hand fingers, still calloused and weathered by service rendered beyond these verdant fields. The sound of distant bugles played in his ears as a memory within the chambers that kept time with his heartbeat, fading into silence as he succumbed to fatigue after yet another restless night away from home's embraced hearth and those comforting hands around him long gone. Slipping deeper under covers than ever before, Thomas found himself at the edge of a dream where time lost its linearity. Days intermingled with years as if they were mere steps on an endless staircase leading to moments past or future yet unseen, a place he often visited when reality became too overwhelming. In this realm beyond waking, Thomas could relive the first day of his enlistment under sunny skies that spoke of promise and beckon with open arms for adventure's allure before marching into a life where uncertainty was as constant as rain upon earth's fertile ground. On occasion, when night surrendered to dawn without him rising from sleep or spell, broken only by the jarring sound of his name rattling through camp and its subsequent echo in distant barracks that seemed worlds apart, yet were part of a larger whole, he was compelled toward each day at sunrise. The soldier's heart ached for home's unconditional love, where laughter spilled from every corner like wine poured generously into goblets, toasting joy and shared moments that seemed perpetually out of reach, as though they lived in another world or world he was barred entry because his body belonged not just to a nation but also to the unyielded coal within him, one for peace amidst storms. Yet Thomas held fast. There were calls beyond duty and survival that whispered through canopies of green where children's laughter mingled with bird songs or symphony overshadowed by distant drumbeats from the front lines which seemed to mock his heart's silent pleas for respite. Within this solitude he often found himself standing at that fateful crossroad when patriotism had been tested against conscience during a dark night in winter's clutcher memory, where Thomas stood firm among soldiers of different creeds and colors, yet bound by the threadbare uniform they all wore as symbols not just for country pride, but also an unspoken unity under shared hardship. The echoes from that frigid eve lingered in his mind, a stark reminder that within every soldier's soul lay multitudes of stories or tapestry woven with threads drawn both black and white into shades gray by necessity rather than choice, as they marched not only toward battle, but also towards destinies unwritten. As Thomas drifted between memories like leaves floating downstream, he often pictured his sister's face or beacon that guided him through nightmares of trenches, where earth beneath weary boots mimicked the softness of soil back home in their mother's garden. In her eyes lay a strength unmatched by any soldier as they watched together from porch swings, swaying gently under summer sunsets, that whispered secrets to those patient enough for revelation, secrets about bravery and fearlessness born not just of duty, but love immeasurable. And so Thomas found himself within a vision where he returned home with tales untold as if each word might shatter the fragile peace that held his family together against war's relentless tide of return, however fantastical it may have been in sleep's realm for which every dreamer longed. In this chapter of restorative darkness, where stars kept vigil over a soldier seeking solace, and the night embraced him like an old friend who knew all too well his heart's silent language ere man at once separated by miles from loved ones, yet closer than ever in spirit's embrace, Thomas allowed himself to be whisked away momentarily into this sanctuary of peaceful reverie, finding strength within the quietude and a sense that though he was but one among many who tread these paths through seasons etched with both sunshine and shadow, carried in him their shared hopes for tomorrow. As sleep took its gentle hold once more under starlit skies, while crickets still serenaded into slumber alone with an old soldier far from home, his breathing slowed until it mirrored Thomas lay under a canopy of twinkling constellations. His chest rose and fell with each gentle rhythm, as if he were breathing in syncopation to their silent melody. The night had begun its slow descent into dawn when the first light tentatively caressed the horizon, a soft herald for what promised a new day's promise of both hope and sorrow alike. As his last conscious thought flickered out, Thomas found himself once again in that tranquil vision where time seemed to pause amidst nature's eternal embrace. He was home. The house stood steadfast against encroaching years, its walls steeped with echoes of laughter and whispers of sighs under starlit evenings, a bastion for his family in times when light often failed them most dearly. The hearth's warm glow illuminated familiar faces. Their eyes bore the depth of shared experiences yet untold to those who sat by its comforting embers daily, each reflection an intimate dance with memories and dreams alike. Thomas wandered through these halls, his steps light upon worn carpets that had muffled countless footfalls over generations past. He walked as one might stroll in the arms of a beloved friend who knew every contour of his spirit without ever needing words to define its texture. He paused before mirrors and glass silent observers, bearing witness not only to appearances, but emotions too, where love's portrait was painted with brushes softer than breath against skin, or whispered confessions that barely quiver the air yet resonate through time's delicate fabric like ripples upon water. Through his father's study doorway he passed a room dense with books and papers, each a vessel of knowledge accumulated over years spent in service to causes grander than any one man's ambition. Here, too, lay the chronicles of their family legacy entwined within threads binding past achievements into present aspirations. He felt his fingers brush against cold, leather-bound tomes, as if reaching through layers of time itself, and touching hands, long stilled in peaceful repose beside a father's own handprints embedded deep within the grain like ancient runes, speaking silent testament to lives lived with purpose under this very roof. The garden whispered tales beneath moonbeams' silver caress, where roses bloomed as though they bore no wound upon their petals, Thorny vines curled around trellises in ardent embrace of verdant tapestry that seemed to pulse with the heart of nature itself. Thomas took his time tracing paths worn into soft earth by boots and bare feet alike. Each step a quiet acknowledgment between souls who had shared this space through seasons, both sun-drenched joyousness and shadow's melancholic shroud, an enduring symbiosis, where life's ebb and flow was felt in the sigh of leaves against backdrop skies. As he wandered, Thomas could not help but feel a kinship with these silent sentinels standing guard over his lineage. They were united by more than blood or bond, interwoven through shared valor within war's unforgiving expanse where bravery was both birthright and burden. His father had been one among those who stood firm when others faltered, each act of courage a thread in the family's tapestry that bound them together amidst chaos wrought by strife beyond their control or testament to love's ability not only to sustain, but also propel forward against seemingly insurmountable adversity. And as Thomas meandered deeper into this reverie, he knew his own story was yet unfolding within the heartbeat of a world that continued its unceasing march even when one soldier's gaze might linger upon memories spun from strands both real and dreamed, her thread connecting him to those who had gone before or would come after in times still unknown. He carried with himself their hopes for peace, the hope of a dawn without darkness, where bonds unbreakable could be remade anew under skies ever-changing yet eternally constant as constellations, steadfast vigil or promise that though battles raged beyond these walls which had so long been his sanctuary and fortress alike, love's enduring flame would remain undimmed. The night held him firmly in its gentle grip. It was within this embrace of darkness, where solace found a home or refuge from the daylight's relentless pace, that often left little room for reflection as Thomas closed his eyes and allowed himself to drift back through time in memory's tender embrace. He found solace not just within these four walls that had cradled him since childhood, but also amidst echoes of laughter long faded into the silence of years gone by. The night's gentle fingers wove threads of darkness around his thoughts as they settled on a chapter yet to be written, or time when he, too, was young and held in hands not so different from those that had once cradled him. All were but children seeking refuge under the same roof against worldly strife. In Chapter 5, The Gathering Storms of Youth, Thomas' tale began with a boy whose heart thrummed to the rhythm of simple pleasures and unguarded dreams beneath an unforgiving sky that promised both rainbows after storms and tempests before sunrises. His father had been steadfast in his ways, a beacon for those who sought warmth against life's biting wind, a man whose courage was the hearth's unwavering flame amidst howling doubts of others around him. As autumn leaves danced to an impending chill and winter loomed on the horizon like silent sentinels awaiting their turn at battle, Thomas recalled his father's teachings. To stand firm in one's belief is akin to standing as tall as life itself, and so he had learned. The day of reckoning came unannounced, but with all-consuming certainty, when the world outside convulsed into chaos and fear crept through cracks that once held only joyous footfalls in his heart's memory garden. Thomas remembered a time before bedtime stories became tales of courage overcoming darkness. He recalled laughter shared beneath stolid skies now shrouded by the cloak of war's advance. And yet, amidst this turbulence that threatened to uproot him from every strand in his family's tapestry, the same resilience had been passed down through whispering voices at dinner and soft-spoken words beneath their shared roof, or testament not only of survival, but also the power inherent within love. And so, on an evening much like this one now, as he lay in bed listening to history's heartbeat ebb with the tide of time's ceaseless flow, Thomas felt a familiar warmth envelop him, or connection not just across generations, but also through shared humanity. The hopes for peace were more than mere words. They lived within this home, where love endured beyond strife's cruel shadow and flourished in the quiet moments that sought refuge from daylight's frenetic pace, allowing souls to whisper truthfully into one another without fear of reprisal or judgment. As he allowed his mind to traverse back further down memory lane within this chapter yet unwritten on paper, but deeply etched upon his heart, Thomas' mother would often tell tales by the warmth of a crackling hearth fire, a place where stories felt as tangible as threads in fabric, and every word wove into memories that time could not erode. The family had learned to find strength together. Their bonds were like steel forged through countless fires, unbreakable even when tested by the most unforgiving elements of life's crucible. Amidst these reflections upon his youthful days spent in endless games and shared adventures that painted each corner with hues of camaraderie, Thomas could hear himself as a child once a gainer boy, whose heart knew not yet the weight or wisdom of years, but carried within it an unshakable trust in those who had stood by him before. The very essence of what made them endure was love's quiet fortitude that no war, famine, nor calamity could extinguish, or flame fueled not just by the fearsome storm outside, but also by each tender smile and every shared tear within these walls where his story began. And though Thomas understood now with clarity, as clear-eyed wisdom born of years uncountable, that he was more than a simple echo in history's vast hallways, had been the keeper already, guardian to stories yet told and listener for those whose tales were woven into his lineage. In this night, where time folded upon itself like an ancient map of constellations, long charted but still ever constant, Thomas sensed that he was no longer merely a character within the chapters authored by others, that in each heartbeat and breath drawn deep from slumber's embrace lay his own story waiting to be penned. It awaited not just for him as in chapter 6 of our tale, nestled within a cocoon as quiet and intimate as his own heart now understood its beating rhythm amidst history's echoes. Thomas found himself drawn into yet another shared adventure with those who had been the threads woven through each fibre of his being. The journey was not one that would see him conquer or vanquish, but rather discover a pilgrimage to a forgotten village, where whispers claimed an ancient relic lay hidden beneath centuries-old cobblestones, and within its glowing amethyst heart pulsed the essence of their interconnected souls. The path led through Time's garden, blooming with memories Thomas knew well, or meadow where, as a boy, he had played under watchful stars, an ancient forest that once stood witness to his family's first harvests and echoes of joyous feasts from yesteryears. It was in this place, now overgrown by the relentless march forward, yet still cradled within nature's eternal embrace, where Thomas felt most at home, or sanctuary for his soul seeking solace beyond measure. In their quest to unveil the relic's secrets and restore it to its rightful place amongst modern life, as a symbol of unity between past generations and those yet to come, they encountered stories that mirrored Thomas' own tales from an era where love triumphed over fear through simple acts woven into everyday existence. As the sun dipped below the horizon one evening, painting it with strokes of gold and crimson like a masterful artist's final touch on their canvas worldview, they found themselves standing before what appeared to be an unremarkable stone wall encircled by wildflowers or hedgerow that held more history than any tome in the grandest library. A small plaque bore no name or date, but spoke of a place where time seemed suspended, and love's true nature was celebrated under moonlit skies, as it always had been within this hidden corner of their shared heritage, or hallowed ground known to some only through whispers that rustled like leaves in the wind. The group felt an unspoken invitation from spirits long passed on, a call backward into memories not lived but remembered with reverence and warmth, as they gathered around a simple wooden table adorned with flickering candles, or setting befitting tales of old, when hearts beat in sync to the rhythm of simpler times. Each person shared stories that danced through their lineage, painting images within Thomas' mind not unlike ones he had once drawn on dusty attic walls as a child's first forays into creativity and exploration. As voices melded with laughter echoing off ancient stones, or symphony of human experience across ages that threaded together the fabric of their shared identity, Thomas realized this was more than just communion. It felt like homecoming on a soulful level, where every whisper had been heard and cherished since his very first breath. The essence of who they were as individuals no longer mattered in isolation, but only through what bound them through a family not defined by blood alone. For Thomas understood that the ties which held him to others ran deeper than genetics into the realm where spirits and stories converge. The nights unfurled like scrolls bearing tales of valor when his ancestors navigated stormy seas under stars. Guidance, days spent in fields swaying with golden wheat that reached for heaven, whispered secrets to those patient enough to listen, secrets of resilience and hope nestling themselves into Thomas' heart as he absorbed these echoes. His spirit soared on wings, carrying tales told by firelight's gentle glow. His soul found comfort in the collective embrace that wrapped itself around him like a shawl woven from memories, shared pain, and Anwar 0029 Durfelt joys, or tapestry of intertwined fates. Within this mystical place where time's river flowed with gentle currents rather than raging torrents, Thomas' heart ached for the simplicity he had known in his youthful innocence, and yearned to weave it into their modern existence a thread of purity that could mend what seemed beyond repair. As they stood at a crossroads where future generations would inherit this village as not just land but legacy, Thomas took solace knowing each shared tear shed in its honor was like rain upon parched earth. Every smile kindled hope against the encroaching shadows of forgetting their love and trust for one another illuminated by a flame that no storm could extinguish. As dawn broke across this timeless place, it brought with it a chorus of birdsong that danced upon the gentle Zephyr's heralds announcing another day where their love could bloom amidst life's tender uncertainties and joys alike. Thomas wrapped his arms around Eleanor's shoulders as they walked hand in hand down to a meadow dappled with sunlight, casting elongated shadows of grass blades that moved like silent prayers on the earth below. Eleanor's laughter rang clear and pure when she caught sight of the mass sound, so warm it felt as if hope itself had been summoned to their side by a benevolent spirit watching over this sacred ground they called home. As children, Thomas and Eleanor would run these fields together with abandon. Now he found solace in the very same embrace that once cradled his young heart, a bond forged through seasons of laughter shared beneath open skies, where stars seemed to twinkle just for them amidst their love's constellation. Their village had transformed, modernity creeping like ivy along ancient stonework and steel beams rising into the sky as if reaching towards those very same celestial guardians that once guided Thomas' ancestors across tempestuous seas to find haven here in this place of shared memories. Yet amidst these changes came a yearning or whispered plea from within for simplicity, kindness, and community felt slipping through the cracks like sand escaping an hourglass at breakneck speed. As they meandered back towards their home place, Thomas held Eleanor's hand ever so gently against his own. He knew that together with her love and in turn hers for him they had become more than just partners navigating life's journey side by side, but the custodians of a tradition where every act woven into this village fabric carried significance beyond its immediate purpose. Here, within these fields and stone walls echoing generations past's footsteps, they held fast to each other, an anchor amidst tides threatening with forgetting who they were meant to be in the eyes of those yet unborn children whose roots would soon entwine their own story here on this hallowed ground. That night, as Thomas lay beside Elena under a blanket woven from threads spun by hands that remembered, he knew it was not just for comfort, but also homage to ancestors who had once walked these very paths and loved like they did with conviction so profound their love could stand against any storm's fury. And as sleep began its gentle claim upon his weary bones beneath Eleanor's caress, he felt the presence of those spirits that danced invisibly amongst them, a reminder this was more than just land and legacy, but an ever-evolving tapestry where every tear shed for their beloved village would serve as rain upon parched earth, each smile kindling hope against encroaching shadows, ensuring the flame of love they shared to never falter. And so Thomas closed his eyes and drifted into dreams cradled by memories that whispered tales told in flickering firelight, a testament to resilience where every secret hope nurtured within this village's heart held the promise of continuity or future hefting their love, trust, and shared histories onward. In these dreamscapes painted with echoes from days long past yet ever so present in spirit lay an invitation for all who would follow to weave purity into existence here, at this crossroads, where time's river flowed quietly within its banks, as if murmuring assurances that love, once kindled beneath a canopy of stars and shared human touches, would always find harbor in the soul. As Thomas slept upon pillows fluffed with whispers from generations before him nestled into his very essence, he knew their village would endure through time's relentless march as surely as day follows night. For here, at this crossroads, where futures were yet unwritten and legacies yearned to be honored, lay the promise of a home not just on paper, but in Thomas found himself lost among these whispering echoes as he ambled toward home after a day that felt like stepping through time or journey across generations, his path lit by flickers and glowworm like stars in an evening sky mirrored by candlelight inside the village's heart. His hands brushed against ancient oak doors of homes weathered yet proud. He traced lines where once fingers had been young or worn with age, a tactile connection to his lineage that grounded him, reminding Thomas why they were here at this crossroads, not just geographically but existentially. The village square was a tapestry of memories and promises woven tightly together. The market bustled as if nothing had changed since he first heard tales from his grandmother by candlelight in her rocking chair, stories that painted pictures no words could fully capture, a vibrant mosaic where every face reflected a shared past. Thomas greeted friends and strangers alike with the same warmth, as if each conversation was an unfurling petal of time itself, revealing new layers to their collective being. His evening meal, prepared by hands that knew no age limit in skill or kindness, or testament to communal ties forged stronger than iron, and sweeter when shared with laughter over tales told across many a table where such dinners had become sacred rites of passage. He chewed thoughtfully on the flavors infused not only by ingredients but also by experiences that seasoned them. As Thomas savored every bite, his senses were nourished, as if each morsel carried whispers from field to table and back again in a cycle unbroken since time immemorial, a reminder of the circle's eternal dance upon which their village thrived. The night beckoned with cool fingers, promising refuge within its cloak. Thomas found solace as he wandered through his garden, where roses bloomed amidst stones that had been laid by forefathers who believed in love's ability to transcend time, or place of sanctuary and reflection. Here, under the watchful gaze of moonlit silhouettes, secrets long held close found release as Thomas spoke aloud his hopes into being. A silent promise made before he retreated once more beneath blankets that had absorbed dreams both wistful and profounder, cocoon where sleep enveloped him like it always did. As the first light of dawn kissed upon dew-laden leaves, Thomas's eyes fluttered open to a new day cradled in hope rather than just receding into darkness, for he knew that though his time with this village was but one chapter among countless others yet unwritten by history's pen, and it is here amidst the gentle awakening of birdsong and rustling leaves, the very essence which had been their sanctuary throughout life's trials, where they found unity in shared dreams that intertwined with reality to create a tapestry richer than any could have woven alone. In his heart he carried the silent strength of women who whispered courage into existence, and men whose hands built fortunes from soil. For this village was more than just walls, paths trodden by feet through seasons. Change it lived in every shared glance that spoke volumes beyond words or tears shed upon loss. The love they had nurtured here would be the seed of new beginnings as he passed on its torch to those who followed. His legacy was not writ only within these borders, but etched into souls intertwined by bonds forged in shared soil and stories told under star-freckled skies. And so, with each sunrise that marked the birth of a new day, each one promising continuity as solidly as his own heartbeat within it, Thomas understood their village was more than just buildings or landmarks to be passed from generation to generation like heirlooms in physical form. It resided instead quietly thriving between shared breaths and inter as dusk settled upon their village like a soft quilt of twilight's pink and gold hues. Thomas found himself reflecting on his life within its embracer symphony that had played out over decades with harmonies born from both joyous celebrations and somber tragedy. His grandfather's tales still echoed in the chamber of memories he held so dear, stories about how a young woman, Elizabeth by name but known to all as the village bard, had once roamed these lands before she became his mother's beloved wife or matriarch, whose wisdom was said to be sourced from books that were lost to time. Their home stood nestled in a grove of ancient oaks where Thomas and Elizabeth raised their children amidst nature's quiet chorus. Every leafy branch seemed woven into the tapestry of life itself as it sheltered generations past under its watchful gaze. It was beneath these very branches that he learned to fish with his grandfather, the old man teaching him not just about patience and technique, but imbuing in Thomas a reverence for living things, their cycles mirroring the ebbs and flows of human existence within this communal haven. Thomas' father had been an artisan. His hands could craft objects both mundane and magical that held stories as complex as any told by Bard Elizabeth. Their home a gallery, where he worked side by side with skilled tradesmen, passing down knowledge of their trade secrets to every young hand eager to learn. The clink of metal upon wood sang in harmony with the strumming of guitars during local festivals. Thomas had watched these gatherings evolve from simple feasts and dances into a community's heartbeat, pulsating through shared artistry that painted history on canvas or a living chronicle as enduring as any hewn stone. Yet It was not just the tangible threads of life in this village which had woven itself around Thomas. His mother spoke fondly of her youthful days spent tending to their small plot alongside Elizabeth, where she too learned the language whispered by earth and skyer dialect that promised abundance while teaching humility. Each harvest was a testament to shared effort as much as it was an offering at altars built from gratitude for nature's generosity. Even now in his twilight years, Thomas felt their intertwined roots strengthening him against the winds of time and distance that sought daily through the village gates. It had been this very essence of unity fostered by shared dreams with those he held dearest that made passing on a treasure beyond material wealth imperative to his soul's journey forward when it came time for him, too, to retire from life's laborious tasks within these familiar bounds. As the sun kissed each horizon good-bye and rose again in silent vigilance at dawn, Thomas felt this village was not simply a backdrop against which he lived, but an intrinsic part of his very being, a place where every shared glance held depth beyond words or embraces that spoke volumes when all else fell to shadow. With the setting sun as their cue for reflection and togetherness, Thomas gathered with friends, old-timers who had witnessed much in years gone by, offering them his own ears while they regaled tales of village lore, each story a beacon guiding him back through time's meandering paths. As the firelight danced upon their faces, and laughter mingled freely with sighs that spoke to shared sorrows like an ancient language understood only by those whose hearts beat as one, he felt this was not just where his body had resided, but a part of him, or piece so essential yet intangible in the summit of life's landscape. The next morning found Thomas at the water's edge with young ones from across generations playing like they were children once more, their laughter ringing clear as day, reminding him that here amidst rippling waves and foam-topped piers was a legacy he yearned to perpetuate. With each sunrise offering promise of continuity, much the same way his heart had been steadfast through every change life presented, Thomers knew this village's spirit would persist, not as mere structures or plots, but living embodiments etched into souls by common soil and intertwined stories beneath star-freckled canopies. As Thomas walked along the path that wound like a ribbon through orchards where apples once flourished under his toilful hands, he came upon an elderly couple who had shared lifelong companionship with him in many, as he watched children from different generations frolic along the water's edge with boundless energy that seemed to defy time itself. Their joyous shouts and playful antics felt like a melody long forgotten by most but not lost within these village bounds. Their innocence was an ember in Thomas' aging heart. It reminded him of his younger days when every day here promised adventure with the earth underfoot. Each season brought forth its own harvest to be gathered, and celebrate a cycle now mirrored by newer generations learning from their forebearers. The laughter had always been a thread linking one era to another. As it cascaded down through years of change, Thomas felt the weightlessness that comes with letting go of worries, untethering his mind like sails catching an invisible breeze. He would sit on the weathered bench beside him where countless others had sat before, a silent witness to decades past and a keeper of their stories, which now lived within as much as they did in objects around. These stones, that bore inscriptions from years gone by, seemed almost like kinfolk conversing with memories. On this morning air carried the promise of renewal, just as it had done for centuries, a refreshing clarity after rain, or a warmth when frost nipped at heels, and everyone knew to dress accordingly, whether they were planting seeds in springtime fields or gathering firewood before winter's chill. The cycle was relentless yet comfortingly predictable. Seasons marked the passage of time not by clock ticks, but through nature's own rhythmic pulse or heartbeat. Thomas felt synchronizing with his as he observed the community in its enduring dance around these waters, a testament to resilience and shared existence. Within this living mosaic that painted each individual not just by face or name, but through their actions within the greater tapestry of village life, it was here amidst rippling waves where Thomas understood his part in continuing its legacy. For every act, however small, like planting a sapling whose roots would one day anchor firmly into earth as he had done before them. His hands ached with memories from years spent tilling the soil alongside kin and kindred spirits who shared laughter under these very stars that witnessed generations of joys, sorrows, and everything in between woven together like threads through a loom whose patterns were life itself within this village fold. As Thomas continued along his path threading through orchards where apples once flourished beneath the care he had provided with hands calloused from laborious days spent at sowing seeds that would one day feed families both near and far, he encountered an elderly couple and old friend whose presence marked a familiar cornerstone in these meandering streets. Their companionship extended over decades of shared moments where they, too, became part of the village's chronicle. Tales of their love had been whispered from one generation to another like folklore passed down through an ancient, trusty loop, their own story a testament that here time seemed almost irrelevant. Walking with them towards home as dusk approached and painted shadows across the land in hues only nature could conjure was their shared ritual. For every evening they sought solace within these very walls, where tales were told not just of happenstance, but revered legacies that had unfolded. Thomas would join his friends around a table laden with bread and cheese as the light faded to twilight, his heart content knowing this village was more than mere buildings or land. It thrived in stories, resilience, and unity of souls who were intertwined by common experiences that transcended beyond physical existence. Amidst these reflections on life's continuity, as the night drew nearer with its velvety darkness enshrouding the village like a comfort blanket, Thomer's thoughts lingered upon those stories of yesteryears, and his role in Thomas's heart ached with memories as he stepped over the threshold, feeling like an intruder returning after a long absence, yet finding himself at home amidst laughter and soft murmurs that filled every corner where his own ancestors had once dwelled under similar roofs so many years ago. His grandmother used to say this house was more than stone. It cradled souls, bound by the unbreakable threads of shared narratives etched into its very foundations as though inscribed with golden ink, invisible to all but those who truly beheld their history and heritage. The old couple welcomed him back with open arms that seemed perpetually folded over one another like a comforting nest, inviting Thomas closer not just physically, but into the warmth of generational bonds unbroken by time's cruel hand. They spoke in hushed tones about their youth or period, when this village was young and full of promise, with eyes shining bright under sun-kissed skies that had since mellowed to a wise twilight ambience where secrets felt safe enough to whisper between the intertwined fingers. As he helped himself from an evening repast or feast more reminiscent of celebration than mere sustenance, with jovial chatter accompanying each bite, and sip as if every morsel were imbued with tales to savor rather than just nourish the body, Thomas couldn't help but smile at their stories about his grandfather teaching him how to make bread in these very ovens, which had been hewn from a single ancient tree by hands weathered and strong as they shaped dough into perfect rounds that rose golden brown under an old gas flame. With each tale shared like passing down of treasurous, Thomers found himself drawn deeper into the narratives woven through generations, hearing about times when his grandfather stood at this very table with a different Thomas before him as he was once named and remembered in youthful Mabbott as fleeting grass. His own father had been more than just flesh. It seemed to be an extension of their family tree that grew roots deep into the soil here, absorbing every drop of wisdom from experiences long past but never forgotten nor lost within this living chronicle they called home. The couple recounted how Thomas's grandfather first met his childhood sweetheart, her story as familiar to him now as a mirror reflecting back at himself through the years that had shaped and reshaped them, like clay in hands of an unseen potter, always molding yet somehow never touching. The love they shared was pure enough for it not just to be spoken about with affectionate reverence, but lived out loud within these walls are testament to the enduring power of human connection that could defy even time's most relentless pursuit, much like how their own names had been uttered in each other in passing down through generations. "And so we return here," whispered his grandmother as she looked at Thomas with eyes filled not just by the passage of years, but understanding a recognition that he was home because this place held more for him than mere residence. It cradled a legacy, an identity passed down like sacred mantras from one generation to another. Thomas felt his own story intertwining within theirs as if they were stanzas in the same poem of life, each contributing verses that when strung together formed this intricate tapestry where every thread was a day lived, each color of a feeling experienced. The couple shared tales spun from threads so delicate yet strong enough to bear witness against all odds, stories like survival during famines and celebrations of abundance, which seemed as distant now in his mind's eye as the stars that had once guided their ancestors across unfamiliar lands, weaving themselves into history with every journey undertaken. as nightfall deepened its velvety embrace upon this village nestled between rolling hills and whispering woods. Thomers found solace in knowing his heritage was a beacon that could never truly fade away, but will always shine brightly for those who sought to remember, learn from it, carry. As Thomas settled into his new role as a guardian of history within this quaint village surrounded by nature's embrace, he found himself more often wandering through fields that felt like they held secrets just beneath their surface, same secret histories the couple had shared with him. This particular evening saw the sky painting itself in shades Thomas knew so well, twilight hues reminiscent of tales from his grandmother's lips about how evenings were once heralded by choruses that spoke to ancestors long gone, their voices as much a part of this land's lore as the trees themselves. The air felt different tonight. It was charged with anticipation and promise, a feeling Thomas attributed more to his heart than anything else he could sense from outside in these parts where life moved at nature's pace rather than human hustle. He understood that, like him, this land held memories of both struggle and celebration, a testament to endurance through times when survival was the only sun beneath stolid skies. Walking along winding paths carved by generations before his own high footsteps echoed tales he felt rather than heard, stories that were etched into cobblestones and whispered in every rustle of leaves, each crunch underfoot a note played on the earth itself like an instrument, long silent. Here was where Thomas realized how deeply entwined life's symphony had been with nature's rhythm. Ebbing tides were to its shore as breaths are to lungs. One could not exist without the other, both sustaining and being shaped by their union through time immemorial. As night fully cloaked him in darkness punctuated only occasionally by starlight that seemed eager for attention even after hours of watchful skies above, Thomas' thoughts meandered to his grandmother's stores-off festivities, where laughter mingled with the aroma of bountiful feasts, and how sorrow often followed tales told beneath moonlit canopies. He pondered on these dual narratives, one that celebrated life in its fullest glory, yet also acknowledged hardship as an integral aspect. Neither could exist without the other's shadow upon their paths through history's meandering trails. Tonight he would meet with Elinor and Joners at a secluded spot by which ancient oak tree stood sentinel over forgotten secrets, her hands cradling tea infused not just with warmth but memories of times when every sip was shared under this very sky, a ritual that had brought comfort in celebrations as much as solace during tribulations. They found themselves wrapped together like a knitted quilt passed down through time, each thread representing decades, experiences woven into the fabric of their being, with love and loss interlaced throughout its patterns to tell stories only they could interpret between shared glances across years gone by under this very same moonlight that danced upon leaves now brittle from winter's touch but once as green. Their dialogue flowed easily into tales about how seasons seemed like pages in a book, each term revealing new chapters of life lived within the village border, a place where time stood still yet never quite stopped moving forward, its heartbeat washing over them with every season's change that brought transformation as certain and unstoppable as rivers carving canyons into continents. As laughter punctuated shared reminiscences, Thomas felt his spirit soaring high above the village's silhouette against a canvas of stars, a place where history was not merely past but present, living in him like breathing air and moving through life with eyes wide open to stories yet untold. And there he found comfort knowing that while tales may fade into whispers, their echoes would always reverberate within the walls they had built upon these grounds, their legacy as enduring as time itself, which neither rain nor sun could erode from his soul or this village's storied foundation beneath him. The night deepened its embrace around them. Elinor and Joners, like Thomas himself, felt a sense of belonging that transcended the mere sharing space, for was where roots entwined with branches to form an unbreakable bond between past, present, and future. As they parted ways under this very same night sky from which their stories had sprung forth in generations before them, Thomas knew he would carry forward a torch that illuminated not just his way, but guided others too, toward understanding the beauty of intertwining narrative as her heritage passed down like cherished family jewelry, with an unspoken promise to protect and honor it. With each as Dorn's tender fingers crept along the horizon's edge, Thomas found himself cradled in a cocoon of tranquility, a stark contrast to yesterday night, where he had felt an electric surge pulsating through his veins as laughter and stories wove their intricate dance. It seemed like only moments since Eleanor's warm embrace held him close, her eyes reflecting the same shared history that now lay in Thomas. Part a tapestry of love spun from threads both tender and resilient. In this sacred morning light he found himself by his old oak desk where tomorrow was not merely an idea, but something to be shaped with patience and care, like clay on the potter's wheel, or vision that had begun its formation within him as a child listening intently under the watchful gaze of Eleanor. It was in those days, beneath this very tree where now he sat contemplating his journey through life alongside Joners' unwavering spirit, and their shared love for preserving his story, a triad whose bonds were fortified with each tale told by moonlight's glow. A gentle knock on the door brought him back to reality. Eleanor had returned, her presence not just a physical visitation but an affirmation of all that he held dear within his heart, and home were living testament in Thomas. World where past intertwined with future like ancient ivy embracing time-worn stone walls. As the sun crested higher into its azure throne, their conversation flowed as effortlessly as a meandering brook. Discussions of upcoming projects that would ensure even more stories found safe harborage in this village's collective memory or responsibility. They felt not just for themselves, but to every soul who called these lands home. Joners arrived shortly afterward with his usual cheerful disposition and a cup brimming with steaming coffee, which he insisted on brewing from beans roasted yesterday by the local miller's wife, as she regaled them about her grandson's adventures in distant lands, tales that made Thomas smile even now despite their separation. They reminisced of simpler times, and yet relished how much had changed, knowing full well they were not merely witnesses to transformation, but architects who laid the foundation stones for progress or legacy built on respecting heritage while embracing change like a river carves its path through stone with patience. With each passing hour of this golden morning, Thomas felt his spirit soar ever upward as he envisioned new horizons that lay just beyond the reach of their humble village, or place where education and artistry would flourish under shared guidance by Joners. Innovative ideas for community workshops. Eleanor's plan to restore ancient murals depicting local law within her own home, a project she had begun with passionate determination the previous night, promised not just beauty, but education, or vessel through which stories of old could be shared afresh as if awakening from an age-old slumber. Together they drafted plans for these initiatives on weathered parchment that bore witness to their dreams. Eleanor's delicate hand traced paths across the page while Thomas' sketches brought a tactile aspect, his own contributions as vital in this partnership of preservation and creation. As ideas took shape like clay under skilled hands, her mural here, an educational program, their shared dream began to form into something tangible, ready for tomorrow's birth, with fresh resolve that their ancestors' tales would not just survive but thrive in a new era of understanding and appreciation. The sun now reached its zenith when the three friends took leave from one another. Each embarked on individual paths, yet remained connected by invisible threads woven through shared memories, laughter echoing into eternity as if their spirits were entwined in an unbreakable bond or triad of souls dedicated to guardianship over stories and the continuum that history provided. As Thomas walked homeward under a sky still holding onto its golden hue like liquid light, he felt his resolve solidify with every step. This was not simply about preserving tales for posterity, but igniting flames of curiosity within new generations, her torch now passed to eager hands ready to explore. The village itself seemed alive in the quiet hours after sunset as Thomas closed each door and turned off lights, leaving him alone once more with only his thoughts echoing through empty streets. Yet, even here, solitude felt like a privilege rather than absence of company, or personal sanctuary for reflection on how to carry forward this mission. That evening, as twilight blended with night and stars emerged as silent witnesses to history's unfolding tales, Thomas found himself on a path less trodden in his beloved village of Eldery, a place where stories were not just told, but lived every day by the hearts that beat within its ancient walls. The sun had retired early from today's sky, yet it was under this cloak of darkness and quiet contemplation that he felt most alive with purpose, for tomorrow would mark a significant milestone in his quest to preserve these stores, or festival dedicated solely to the oral histories passed down through generations. With night came cooler air, brushing against Thomas' skin like reminders of time's passage, as he walked homeward under starlight that filtered gently between leaves and branches alike. Each step seemed purposeful on cobblestone streets, where echoes lingered whispering tales from the past to those who would listen with earnest intent. At his quaint abode, which was no more than a modest stone house that had borne witness to countless seasons of change and growth, Thomas found solace in its familiarity. It served as both home and refuge for all things tied up within the rich tapestry he sought to uphold. There were shelves filled with leather-bound tomes on local folklore that had been collected over generations, each a guardian of knowledge, eagerly waiting their turn in sharing its contents at daybreak's first light during an open gathering the festival would bring forth into being. Tonight, however, he allowed his thoughts to wander beyond these walls as reflections danced within him. How best could one keep a flame of storytelling burning brightly in this digital age? What methods might entice not just young ears, but also the hearts and minds that had perhaps never truly listened before? In search of answers, Thomas sought counsel with Alora, an elder who wove magic into tales as naturally as breathing air. Her wisdom was a lighthouse amidst life's tempests. Their conversations often unfurled like the petals of knowledge itself, on delicate bloom after another, revealing layers not immediately visible to hasty observation, but which promised growth and transformation in patience's embrace. Tonight, Ilara found Thomas on a bench beneath an ancient elm tree that had been part historian's archive and now stood as their shared sanctuary. Its roots seemed intertwined with the very essence of Eldoria itself, her testament to resilience through epochs. They spoke softly, sharing ideas underneath a moonlit sky while casting shadows upon ground that had cradled footsteps since time immemorial. Alora, Thomas began in earnest as the night held them within its tender grasp like an old friend's comforting hand on one's shoulder amidst unfamiliar territories. I worry for our stories that they might fade into obscurity if we cannot connect with those who are not yet of age to hear from us. Elara gazed at him thoughtfully through the gnarled branches above as she responded in kind. We must be like water, Thomas. Let it flow around obstacles and find new paths when old ones become barren. Her eyes sparkled with a light that seemed undimmed by years spent under open skies. Their shared laughter was an echo of unbridled joy through time's corridor as she continued her wise counsel. Together they envisioned interactive storytelling sessions where tales would be not just told but experienced in a multisensory journey that invited listeners to touch history with their own hands and hearts while savoring the flavors of ancient narrative, as a feast for all senses designed by an intertwining dance between past, present, and future. Perhaps we can invite children as young apprentices, Thomas mused aloud after a moment's pause. His voice was threading through Alora's own thoughts with the gentle persistence of silver and gold filigree, an idea taking shape under shared inspiration that would bridge generations. They must learn to see themselves within stories, just as we once did, he added solemnly, while a sense of responsibility settled deep into his bones like morning mist over dew-kissed meadows. Alora nodded slowly. Their dialogue was painting new horizons on the vast canvas that history itself had provided, endeavored to breathe life back into tales, longing for voices in unison with those who might one day inherit them as cherished heirlooms of a culture's soul. Alora's heart swelled with the thought that children could touch history not just intellectually, but emotionally. Or feast she imagined, where each sensory experience was as rich and varied as a painter's palette, bringing forth vibrant images of past civilizations from within their young minds. She had always believed stories were more than mere words. They were the lifeblood connecting one era to another, carrying with them truths that transcended time itself. Her concept Thomas found equally fascinating and vital for preserving cultural identity among youth in an increasingly digital age. Together at their wooden picnic table littered with ancient texts on history's dramatic landscapes, they sketched out a plan to create sensory story stations that could be hosted within community centers or visited as pop-up experiences across the city, or journey into time where children would not just listen, but feel and touch. As dusk began its tender approach with hues of orange painting the sky, Ilara's thoughts drifted to inviting local artists who could help transform these stories using elements like scent diffusers, releasing aromas tied to historical settings, or tactile materials that replicated ancient texture as a way for children's fingers not only to read but also feel histories as if they were their own. With the last flicker of sunlight caressing her skin, Ilara and Thomas felt it was time to bring this vision closer into reality. A pilgrimage through archives had already begun in search for stories that held not just educational value, but emotional resonance, a mosaic of tales waiting to be pieced together like puzzles scattered across the fabric of history. The following morning found Ilara and Thomas visiting schools, sharing their vision with educators who were as intrigued by this innovative approach as they were themselves. Stories would not simply float in children's ears, but resonate through every sense, a shared journey that could bridge worlds separated only by time. As the weeks turned into months and plans started to solidify, Ilara realized a collaboration with tech-savvy youth who envisioned augmented reality experiences, bringing history directly from their smartphones or tablets right before children's very eyes, where dragons of law could roar in full splendor within the confines of modern cityscapes. One evening, as they sat amidst a circle formed by eager young minds and curious educators, with Ilara at its heart weaving tales like threads into tapestries that once seemed fragile, whispers now bloomed to life. Children's eyes glistened with the first drops of tears, not from sorrow, but understanding, as they beheld histories lived in joyous reenactment. Their project had begun small enough within Ilara and Thomas' own community center, where interactive storytelling sessions became a regular occurrence, a sanctuary for both young apprentices, eager to see themselves reflected in history's mirror, as well as seasoned elders who found joy watching the past unravel through youthful eyes once more. The project blossomed beyond their expectations, with invitations being extended into other neighborhoods and schools, a cultural phenomenon where children not only recount stories, but become part of them in a multisensory experience that invited all to touch, smell, taste the very essence of history's fabric. Ilara's heart swelled as they celebrated their first community-wide event with local dignitaries and historians, or festival, where storytelling was no longer just an act, but a shared odyssey through time that had children laughing in one room, singing hymns of ancient gods, alongside musicians clad in traditional attire within another. History's whispers now wrought as living memories. As the project grew to encompass virtual realities and global interaction, Ilara felt a sense of accomplishment mingled with humility for having been part of something that extended far beyond her own aspirations, becoming an intergenerational bridge where past wisdom was handed down through generations in ways unimaginable just years before. In Chapter 16 of our grand historical tapestry woven by Ilara and Thomas's project, a new chapter began to unfurl as they ventured into uncharted territories beyond their immediate surroundings, into lands that had once been the cradle for civilizations rich with stories begging to be told. As dawn broke over an ancient city now repurposed by time and technology alike, Ilara's gaze rested upon a tower of marble columns standing sentinel at its heart. This was Athens in full bloom during the festival they had heard so much about since their project began. Lesser known gems, the untold stories. The duo stepped off the train that whistled softly as it arrived, carrying whispers of past glories and echoes from history's chambers. Ilara felt a tingling sensation at their fingertips, or connection to something greater than themselves. They could almost hear the footsteps of Socrates pacing in thought beneath them while he debated philosophies that shaped Western civilization, his words still reverberating through time's fabric. In Athens, Ilara and Thomas joined a guided tour led by scholars whose eyes gleamed with passion as they shared tales of the Avorar place, where ideas were bartered like currency among citizens who sought knowledge alongside olives and cheese from local markets. As their guide spoke eloquently about democracy's birth, Ilara imagined themselves amidst these pioneers. She wondered what thoughts would have passed through Socrates' mind as he questioned the Athenians in pursuit of truth, or thought that made Thomas chuckle at her day-zero mighty reverie. Later, they wandered to a reconstructed section dedicated to Plato's Academy, where Ilara felt an unexplained sense of belonging as she stood beneath the shadow of what could have been. Here were once walls that sheltered minds thirsting for understanding and wisdom, or haven much like their own community center. As Thomas recited lines from the symposium, his voice carried them back to a time when ideas flowed freely, unshackled by modernity's constraints or fear of dissent. Ilara closed her eyes as if she could see the dialogue unfolding before her, living history that was no longer silent. That evening at the Odeon, where they found themselves amid a chorus echoing ancient hymns and laughter intertwined with melodies inspired by Homer's epics, Here were stories of gods and heroes recounted anew through the artistry of those who revered these tales as fervently today. As Alora watched dancers in garb reminiscent of ancient times, her heart danced to a rhythm that seemed eternal pulse within history's veins, still beating strong and clear for all willing hearts listen attentively enough to hear its cadence amid the din of modern life. The next day brought them face to face with artisans who honored their craft just as those in ancient times did craftspeople whose hands shaped materials into timeless expressions that would have graced temples and homes alike centuries ago. With threads dyed by natural pigments, they spun fabrics rich in history's hues. Elora envisioned herself wrapped within these textiles as if time itself had folded upon her shoulders her tactile connection to the past that she could feel rather than merely see or touch digitally. In a quiet corner of their journey, they sat with historians and learned elders who spoke not only words, but also shared wisdom through stories told by firelight years ago. These narratives were woven into lessons for Alora's own projector bridge between epochs, where the past reached out to mingle once more with today's seekers of knowledge. Thomas took diligent notes as they discussed how oral traditions had preserved histories, ensuring that no voice was lost through time. Each revelation struck a chord within Alora's heart, a symphony composed by the many hands and minds dedicated to remembering what once seemed forgotten in the rush of progress. As night descended upon Athens with stars twinkling like distant memories, they found themselves at an open-air library that harbored tomes printed on handmade paper, a treasure trove where knowledge was revered as sacredly as it had been centuries prior. In this sanctuary of silence and soft lighting, Elora felt a resonance within the pages she turned. With every story absorbed through her mind, Elora sat cross-legged in a circle of flickering shadows cast by candlelight on stone walls, where historians and wise elders had gathered to share tales cast down through generations like precious heirlooms. Each word spoken was dipped into the warm amber glow that danced across faces etched with lines of wisdom earned not just from age but a lifetime spent as custodians of knowledge, their eyes mirroring stories, untold yet deeply felt. The historians spoke first her grand patriarch, whose voice held echoes of ancient times when his ancestors had walked these lands under the Acropolis itself. He told Elora about her homeland's glory days and darkest hours with a passion that turned history into myth, legend flowing from him as naturally as breath through lungs. He painted pictures in words so vivid she could taste the salt of Athenian sea breezes on her tongue. Here, the clash of hoplites marching for war or celebration. Next came a woman whose tales were interwoven with threads from various cultures that had molded and been shaped by Athens' ever-changing tapestry over centuries. She spoke in lilts, inflections borrowed from the melodies of languages once common here, but now receding into whispers among elders like her own mother. Her stories were rich with references to foreign dignitaries and domestic craftsmanship that had made Athens a crucible for cross-cultural exchange. She described how even as empires rose and fell, the city's heartbeat remained unyielding, her symphony played in countless keys. Elora listened intently to each storyteller while Thomas jotted down notes with increasing fervor. As he wrote, his hand moved like a conductor's baton, directing an invisible orchestra of ideas and insights into the notebook that became their shared journal during this pilgrimage through time. His role was one as silent yet vital to Elora's endeavor. Without him documenting these experiences, her project would be but mere echoes against a backdrop of relentless progress, eroding relics and lore alike into obscurity. A young historian approached with tales not from dusty scrolls or ancient tablets, but lived memory, a chronicler whose grandfather had been present at every significant turn in Athens's storied past. His stories a living archive of personal history that no text could capture fully. He shared anecdotes about the city's resistance and resilience during times when its very existence was threatened by outside forces. The elders spoke next her counsel, whose wisdom stemmed from lives lived in service to their people, tales not just told but felt through a bond with Athens that transcended mere words. They shared stories of unity amidst strife and the importance of remembering one's roots while planting seeds for future generations. Their voices carried weight or gravity born from experience rather than title or accomplishment, their narratives grounded in personal sacrifices made during Athens' most tumultuous epochs. These were stories that shaped a city and its people more deeply than any monument could do alone. As night deepened into the velvety embrace of pre-dawn darkness, Elora felt as if she too had been part of this continuum for centuries, or thread woven through time by listeners' tales to weave her own narrative anew. Their stories fueled a fire within that would illuminate Athens, past not only in textbooks but living memory. With each story, the weight on Elora's shoulders seemed to lift and fold into itself her tactile connection so profound she could feel time's texture against her skin. The library hummed with shared histories as a gentle breeze wafted through open windows carrying whispers of ancient wisdom that blended seamlessly with the present. It was within this sanctuary Elora felt an unspoken promise and oath not just to record, but to breathe life back into history, ensuring its flame would burn in tomorrow's heart as fiercely as today. As dawn began her slow procession across the horizon, painting Athens with hues of gold and rose that mirrored tales told by firelight, Elora felt awakened not just to a new day, but also within herself her custodian tasked with tending to an eternal flame. The historian's words had become her seeds, the elders' experiences were water nurturing growth in soil rich with collective memory and shared human endeavor, all captured by Thomas's diligent scribbling on pages that would serve in chapter 18. As Elora stood amidst rows of time-worn scrolls and texts in Thomas's library sanctuary where history whispered secrets to those who would listen, she felt a gentle stir within her soul, or calling not just from the past, but also towards an unforeseen future. With each word that passed between tongues old as Athens itself, Elora's understanding deepened. Stories of valor and vulnerability were no longer mere words on parchment. Of living elements she was to nurture like delicate flowers in her mind's garden. The library bore an ethereal stillness, that ninth kind which seemed almost tangible, as if the knowledge itself could be felt brushing against one's fingertips with every turn of a page and pause between breaths. In this sacred silence echoed voices from ancient orators to modern scholars alike, their dialogues woven into tapestries that adorned each corner, inviting Elora to touch them as if they were threads in her own life's fabric, of personal history being reconstructed with every narrative she embraced. Elora's fingers traced the contours of a leather-bound volume whose time-worn pages promised tales untold. And so began another night wherein Thomas guided Elora through stories that transcended Liffit's zero spans. Tales passed from one listener to another had always been sacred in their own right, keepers of cultural essence who understood the power inherent within each recollection. However, now it was time for a new voice amongst them, and with her heart swelling at this unexpected role bestowed upon herself by fate, or perhaps history's gentle nudge. In one secluded alcove, where shadows played along dusty spines of forgotten law, stood an artifact that caught Elora's eye, a bronze amphora inscribed with the mythic tales of gods and mortals, whose existence had been all but erased from common memory by time's relentless march. With trembling hands she reached for it. As her fingers made contact, a warmth spread throughout Elora's body, a sensory embrace that connected her to the very soul of Athens itself. This was no ordinary object in Thomas's library, but rather an ark holding remnants of civilization's spirit and echoes from Olympus alike. The connection grew deeper as she sat, immersed now not just within stories bound by leather or encased metal, but also feeling the reverberations through her own bones, her communion with a past that felt like both an inheritance and gift of light against darkness's expanse in history's night. Here lay tales where love triumphed over loss, heroism blossomed from humility, and wisdom was often found within folly. It seemed the very marrow coursing through Elora mirrored this ancient strength that had survived epochs to find refuge here among these pages and whispers of reverence. As Dorn's tentative fingers painted gold across cobblestones, coaxing blooms from their slumber for a new day's awakening, Elora found herself standing before the Parthenon once more, in her mind's eye, a place where countless narratives had been witnessed and birthed. The structure itself seemed to acknowledge this pilgrimage of spirit through stone as it reflected back not just sunlight, but insight, a reflection that spanned generations, connecting Elora now with the artisans who raised its columns into existence centuries of our shared human endeavor in perpetuity's embrace. Through stories told beside roaring fires and candlelit nights to ones penned by Thomas's careful hand under starlight, Each tale Alara unraveled became a stepping stone across time. She tread upon them lightly as one might walk on sacred ground, but with an awareness that through such paths lay the power of rebirth or chance for Athens, past to not just exist in collective memory, but also thrive within present hearts. The promise Elora felt, this oath whispered by history itself upon her ear as she ventured further into tales, both grand and intimate. It was a vow that the flame of understanding would continue burning brightly, a beacon for souls seeking to bridge eras with their own experiences. As an ambassador between worlds, Elora's task seemed daunting yet invigorating as she bore witness not just to triumph but also tragedy, and in doing so honored the full spectrum of humanity's journey, its shadows included within her narrative tapestry in a place where time seemed to curl around itself like smoke in an ancient hearth. Elora found herself seated once more at her weathered oak desk, her sanctuary of thoughts and memories amidst Athens' ruins that now whispered tales as old as the Parthenon. The night air hung heavy with history, a cloak woven from threads both somber and golden. She drew in its essence to fuel her journey through stories long told, but never fully understood by those who heard them alone till tonight, when Elora's soul would become part of this continuum, beneath the vaulted sky adorned with stars that had guided sailors and philosophers alike. She let her eyes fall closed as a gentle breeze carried over from Acropolis through open windows to brush against skin still warm after hours under candlelight discussions about humanity's legacy. It was here in Athens where Elora felt the heartbeat of history pulsating around every cobblestone and crumbling column, echoing tales that spanned from heroic deeds at Thermopylae to whispered secrets behind closed temple doors, or symphony composed by many hands through ages. As her fingers traced the contours of a time-worn amphora resting beside faded frescoes, Elora pondered upon its journey from clay and fire into an object that held both water for thirsty travelers and stories waiting to be savored once more in modern lips. The artifact seemed as much alive now within her grasp as it had been a silent sentinel atop shelves of Delphi, listening intently whenever oracles spoke truths veiled by enigmas, a bridge across time that Elora was eager to cross with this evening's work. The soft light from the lamp on her desk cast long shadows as she opened a leather-bound journal inherited from an Athenian scholar, whose inked words had begun their own pilgrimage through history before settling into permanence upon yellowed pages that held more than just academic musings. They cradled emotions too profound for mere speech. Elora began to read of a young artist who once walked these streets, where now lay only the ghosts of marble feet, sharing with Thomas her passion under moonlit skies as their paintbrushes danced across canvases that would outlast empires and eras alike, a bond formed not just between people, but generations entwined in shared human experience. With each page turned by the gentle stroke of Elora's pen, she wove her own tale alongside those already etched into Athenian law. This was a story that would honor both triumph and tragedy, a requiem for lost loves, as well as an ode to enduring friendships. She recounted the lives of ancient denizens who had sought refuge in Athena's sacred grounds, finding solace among columns built not just with stone, but also hoped that their own spirits might ascend towards Olympus should they ever leave this world, or testament to human resilience and faith amidst adversity's shadowy halls. The air grew cooler as night deepened, heralding the approach of a time when tales were not only told but felt in bone-deep chills that reminded Elora mortality was an ever-present companion, or fragile thread connecting all human endeavor to fate's capricious whims. Yet within this understanding came strength, for it is through sharing stories across the span of centuries, she mused with a smile touching her lips and eyes reflecting candlelight that flickered like tiny beacons in darkness, embrace that knowledge persists beyond flesh's confines to live eternally within those who dare listen. Athens held stories not just of marble gods, but also whispers between lovers, a sacred dance performed beneath the Acropolis that defied time. Elora now chronicled their silent sonnet, as if her own heart sang in resonance with every stolen kiss and tender embrace, her narrative honoring love's unyielding power to transcend mortality's grasp. In a city where history had been both maker and keeper of tales, Ilara was humbled by the realization that her voice would join this chorus through which wisdom found sanctuary beyond death, a promise made not just with pen but also spirit, as she became ambassador between worlds whose boundaries were defined only by imagination's fearless exploration. The night surrendered to a deepening indigo, and Ilara felt her body grow weary as Ilara's fingers traced ancient Greek phrases etched into her leather-bound journal under the dim glow of a solitary candle. She paused at one entry, a narrative woven from whispers and yearnings that transcended mere ink. The chronicle spoke to her soul with an eloquence born only within these hallowed city walls, where gods mingled freely amongst mortals, as if they shared the same flesh beneath their robed forms on high atop Mount Olympus, now long forgotten by time's relentless march forward, yet ever present in Athens' air. The night deepened into a velvety blackness, punctuated only by flickering candle flames that seemed to dance with the echoes of past lives and lost loves entwined within their sputtering light. Ilara felt as if she were walking through time, her every step upon Kabbalist zero-edge streets, a bridge connecting eras apart, where once stood temples dedicated not only to gods, but also shrines for the most sacred of human relationships, love and longing that defied reason's constraints, just like Athens itself refused such simple classifications. Amidst this reverie, Ilara found herself before an ancient olive tree under which two shadows met in quiet communion every evening, as though time folded upon themselves to preserve their shared secreter lover's embrace that transcended the mere physical and ventured into realms where heartbeats echoed louder than clashing swords or hymns praising deities. This tree, rooted in history's soil like an immortal sentinel of whispered sweet nothings never meant for daylight's judgment. Ilara closed her eyes and let the sensations wash over her as if she were one with them, a shared heartbeat synchronized within this sacred grove, transcending mere mortality's confines, to become something ethereal, or melody of intertwined souls resonating through each leaf that rustled in their tender caress. When the world began its slow awakening with a golden hue gracing dawn's edge upon Athens, Ilara whispered her final thoughts into this narrative vessel. She had become a chronicler of tales whose very essence transcended mere physical existence, to live eternally within those who dared listen. With each word penned in the fading light, and with every story shared across centuries that danced like shadows between sunset's glow, Ilara became more than a keeper. She was now an ambassador traversing worlds where love's power reigned supreme over death, itself her promise made not just with pen, but also spirit. And so as the night surrendered to deepening indigo and her body grew weary from its journey through time's embrace, Ilara felt a serene peace settle within her soul, for she understood now that love was an ever-present companioner, fragile thread connecting all human endeavor regardless of era or epoch. And though the world beyond Athens' ancient stones would continue to evolve in ways untold and paths yet undiscovered, Ilara knew with certainty her tale had become a part of something far greater than herself, an eternal narrative where every kiss stolen beneath Acropolis' watchful eyes defied time itself. And as she lay down to rest under the stars that continued their silent vigil over the city birthed from history's womb, Ilara embraced her role in a story much bigger than herself, her legacy immortalized not just through words, but also spirit and shared human experiences, for it is within stories like these where wisdom finds sanctuary beyond death, through the eyes of those who dare listen to tales woven with heartbeats. Ilara's voice joined an eternal chorus celebrating love's unyielding power, a harmony that resonated through generations and echoed across time itself, where every whisper shared under olive trees became part of a greater symphony crafted by the intertwining souls who sought solace in one another. In this city, history had been both maker and keeper of tales, her sacred dance performed beneath Acropolis' shadow that defied time as if it were merely an illusion cast upon mortal eyes. For though Athens was a place where gods once walked among men to sip ambrosia in temples now crumbled, its essence remained steadfast and true. Ilara realized then the night had gifted her with more than just memories, it bestowed wisdom that would ripple through ages, as though Athens, as dawn began to break over Athens, painting its ancient ruins with pastel hues of gold and pinker daily rebirth, that seemed almost otherworldly in itself. Ilara nestled deeper into her bedding at a simple guest house near the Acropolis. Her mind still vibrated from the nocturnal symphony she had joined, where each whisper shared beneath those olive trees felt like notes on an eternal score of human connection and love's power that transcended time itself. She understood now. Athens held a place not only in history, but also within her solar city that defied the very concept of death through its stories, which became part of something greater than themselves. But as Alara surrendered to sleep's embrace and dreamt beneath those same stars who had watched over countless souls before hers, she found herself standing once again atop a hillside not far from where the gods would have walked when they mingled with mortals in their temples. Now these sacred grounds lay silent but for the whispers of history that clung to every weathered stone and echoes within each cobblestone path, telling tales as old as civilization itself, a reminder of humanity's timeless dance between creation and destruction, love and loss. As she stood there in her dream dress, made from the threads of nightfall, Ilaro closed her eyes to listen once more with ears that could hear beyond time's veil, a tale about a young woman who had lived two lives within Athens. Embrace her life as it was and another untouched by temporal chains. This otherworldly existence allowed the protagonist of this dual journey, named Penelope, to witness moments in history that others could only dream of, her heart connected directly with souls long gone or yet to be born into a future she helped shape through subtle whispers and gentle guidance across ages, her guardian spirit overseeing the city's spiritual legacy. Penelope had once been an ordinary woman, but fate whispered secrets of timeless realms to her when Athens was not just a place on earth. It became the axis upon which time itself seemed to spin. She discovered that through love and shared human experiences, her bond she formed with those who believed in stories, power beyond their physical lives could touch eternity, weaving memories into myths, as though they were her own children's. Laughter or tears mingled on the riverbed of time itself. One such memory painted a vivid scene from centuries past wherein Penelope stood beside Helen Troy, whose fate had unwittingly set forth waves that would one day crash upon Athens' very foundations. Their conversation flowed as easily between them as if they were old friends sharing confidences beneath the same sun. In her own era, Ilara met a kindred spirit named the Arad historian, enraptured by tales of ancient Greece and Penelope's existence, whose heartbeats resonated with stories from beyond life itself. Their connection was instantaneous, as if they were two halves of one entity separated only by time. Penelope often found herself whispering into the ears of great minds like Socrates, guiding philosophical thought that would echo through centuries to come and offering solace during personal tragedies such as Plato's loss, or connection felt rather than seen but deeply understood in shared empathy. As time wound forward, Penelope had become a muse for artists who captured her spirit on canvas or sculpted clay into forms that defied mortality itself. She became the embodiment of an immortal love story, where every brushstroke and chiseled detail celebrated life's ephemeral beauty. Thr0R to Alora's own existence, Penelope had encountered a soul like her, a woman whose heart ached with unfulfilled dreams, yearning for the past, but was bound by time in an era without magic or mythical guardianship. This character's journey intertwined deeply within hers as she helped them find purpose and peace amidst their temporal constraints. In return, Penelope discovered that Alora's spirit carried a lighter, gentle glow of curiosity about the past mingled with her own present-day struggles for understanding. Both women became threads in an eternal tapestry where each soul's tale interlocked within Athens' art. Throughout this chapter, Elora and Penelope wandered through time's labyrinth, together, a shared exploration that uncovered secrets of the city nestled between ancient marble columns which held whispers not just from history but also prophecies about what might come in a moment of respite within Athens' hallowed city walls. Ilara and Penelope paused beneath an ancient olive tree that had stood as silent witness to countless human sorrows and joys alike. Its gnarled branches sheltered them in its leafy embrace, while the distant Aegean hummed a tune of eternal motion, or song seemingly lost on these two souls who sought understanding through time's veiled mysteries. Through their journey, Ilara and Penelope had uncovered not only secrets whispering from marble columns, but also the threads that wove humanity's shared experience into a tapestry of collective memory and interconnected saga spanning generations within Athens' enduring legacy. They found themselves inexplicably drawn to this very moment where past and present seemed suspended, as if both women were custodians of history ensnared between yesterday's echoes and tomorrow's unborn dreams alike. As Penelope traced her fingertips along the cool stone beneath them, she felt an unexpected kinship with Alara, kindred spirit, who also struggled to grasp at fleeting moments of transcendence amidst life's temporal confines. Both women were seekers on a quest for meaning in their respected epochs. This bond grew stronger as they delved deeper into the heartbeat of Athens, unearthing stories etched not just upon its structures but also woven within each individual who tread these sacred paths before them. In one evening's twilight that kissed both sky and sea with hues of gold and amethyst, Penelope encountered a soul unlike any she had met thus far, an artist whose spirit seemed to transcend the boundaries between life and death itself. He was captivated by tales spun from threads drawn directly into existence through Alara's guidance. As they conversed beneath Athens' watchful eyes, Penelope discovered that this man carried with him a piece of her own essence, their shared love for beauty in its myriad forms, and an unspoken understanding about the ephemeral nature of life which resonated deeply within both women's hearts. Their conversation soon took them to ancient amphitheaters where once stood audiences captivated by tales that transcended mere entertainment. Here they witnessed passionate performances echoing through history, offering solace during personal tragedies such as Plato's loss or connection, felt rather than seen, but deeply understood in shared empathy. It was within this sacred space where Alara and Penelope recognized that their own stories were not isolated chapters written upon the pages of time. Instead, they intertwined, a complex narrative emerging from individual lives woven together like threads on Athens' historical tapestry. Inspired by these revelations about shared human experience across ages and cultures alike, and moved to preserve what little beauty could be found amidst life's transient nature, Alara guided Penelope back into her own time, where she continued the work of artists seeking solace in creating immortalized works that celebrated both personal struggle and unfulfilled dreams. As Alara bid farewell to Athens' embrace under twilight skies, they recognized their shared journey had become a part of something greater, a never-ending dialogue between souls whose stories transcended mere mortality itself. These connections offered solace in times of sorrow and hope for understanding amidst life's unpredictable tides. And as night descended upon Athens, Alara stood once more beneath the ancient olive tree that had sheltered her companions through time's labyrinthine journey, silent guardian bearing witness to a tale of intertwined souls searching for truth within life's ever-shifting mosaic, each leaf whispering promises yet unfulfilled about what might come, while also echoing the whispers from history that had guided them thus far. Within Athens' heart lay an eternal tapestry of human experience, a story continuously woven by souls like Alara and Penelope, who carried within themselves a thread connecting past wisdom with present understanding. Together they danced through time's veiled mysteries, unlocking secrets whispered from the city's very foundation to bring solace in their quest for transcendental truth. As night turned into dawn and Athens continued its timeless dance between history and modernity, a like their story remained forever etched upon each stone column, a tale of shared human experience woven together within an immortal tapestry, where every soul's journey interlocked in Alara's fingers traced the rough bark of the aged tree, feeling its countless secrets pressed deep within layers of time-soaked wood. She felt a kinship here that was both comforting and profoundly grounding amidst Athens' eternal dances between past grandeur and present simplicity. Penelope watched from beside her with eyes reflecting the starry sky, understanding in their depths how this moment had become another stitch in humanity's intricate fabric, a place where souls could pause to listen closely for wisdom carried by generations of restless spirits seeking solace and guidance among these venerable roots. The friends gathered around the olive tree, each one holding a small artifact, trinkets from Alara's grandmother's past life in Egyptian Alexandria papyrus scroll that had survived centuries to whisper of ancient philosophies lost to time but living still within their hearts. Penelope carried an heirloom locket, its silver surface etched with the initial EP from her grandmother's diary detailing life during London's Industrial Revolution and revealing a lineage intertwined not just by blood but also through shared experiences of loss, love, grief, and triumph. Marcus held an old map marked in faded sepia tones, an explorer who had once roamed the wild frontiers with Elara's ancestors before seeking refuge among Athens' scholarly sanctuaries. As they sat together beneath a canopy of silver-leafed olive branches, their stories converged into one continuous narrative. Tales that crossed desert sands to London alleyways and back through the bustling city streets where Marcus had once lived as an orphan, a tale not just of survival, but also of finding purpose in a world often indifferent. The grove around them seemed alive, listening intently while sharing its own silent dialogue with those who sought to understand themselves within it. Each breath among the ancient trees felt like communion, and every whispering leaf an echo from ages past or testament that their shared journey was but one thread in Athens' immortal tapestry. And so, as Elara spoke of her grandmother's life amidst Alexandria's scholarly halls where wisdom flowed like the Nile itself, and Penelope recounted how she had learned resilience during London's smog-choked winter night, how Marcus shared his tales from roaming through untouched wildlands, their voices became one with Athens, a harmonious chorus that reverberated against the walls of time. It was as if they each held in their hands not just personal histories, but also keys to understanding life's broader mysterious, forged from shared human experiences etched into stone and soil, waiting patiently yet persistently like Athens itself, with its Parthenon silhouette against the skyline. In these moments, beneath an olive tree that had borne witness to countless such gatherings through centuries of sunsets and dawns alike, if friends felt as though they were standing on a precipice, peering into eternity itself, where every shared memory was both anchor and compass guiding them towards revelation. Elora thought about how her grandmother's tales spoke not just to the heart, but also touched upon philosophical musings that seemed timeless in their relevance, how thoughts once birthed from a mind amidst Alexandria's skull zero hours could still enlighten souls across continents and cultures. Penelope smiled softly as she held her locket close, feeling the warmth of familial love that transcended generations. It had been through enduring lost passing of a grandfather in London's grimy winter streets that Penelope learned about life's ephemeral nature and how each moment holds infinite worth. In these shared experiences, they discovered not just the strength within themselves, but also found comfort knowing that others before them had navigated through their own tides of sorrow to reach shores touched by hope's gentle hand. Even as they stood beneath that ancient olive tree, its gnarled branches a testament to history itself, Elora and Penelope felt an inexplicable connection, as if their souls were entwined with its own roots reaching deep into the earth's core. The air around them seemed filled not just with whispers of wind, but also echoes from times long past, stories that had found solace among these weathered leaves and whispering shadows beneath which they now stood together, side by side, as friends who shared an unbreakable bond woven through the tapestry of their own histories. Elara's gaze drifted upwards to where a solitary star twinkled faintly against the velvety backdrop of night, a silent sentinel that had borne witness since time immemorial, just as this olive tree itself stood guard over their shared revelations. It was under its watchful eyes they began recounting tales handed down through generations, stories not unlike themselves, travelers on the journey called life who sought to find solace in camaraderie and understanding when faced with adversity's stormy winds. Penelope's locket, a family heirloom that had traversed oceans from London through her grandmother, a memento of love etched into gold amidst the backdrop of war-torn skies and smoke billowing out over cobbled streets. The jewel within its clasp was no mere trinket. It encapsulated a lifetime's worth of moments, both bitterly sweet and achingly beautiful, or tangible reminder that though time may erode the physical form, memories remain untouched by decay's cruel hands. And so as they shared these fragments of their own lives with each other, tales spun from threads woven through experiences unique yet universal in essence, Elora's heart swelled within her chest at how she could find solace and strength, not just for herself, but also an anchor to remind Penelope that though loss was as certain a part of life's journey, so too is love enduring. The night wore on slowly, the hours slipping by unnoticed between whispers shared in hushed tones under this ancient canopy, or place where stories seemed almost tangible amidst rustling leaves and creaking boughs that spoke of secrets long buried beneath their roots but never forgotten, preserved within layers upon layers of soil over which the tree stood as a guardian for both past events etched into history's vast annals. Elora felt Penelope's hand rest gently on her own, warmth radiating through it like heat from an ember, a silent testament to kinship and unconditional friendship that transcended the mere physical world around them, for they understood each other in ways others could not. They were kindred spirits born of different eras, yet bound by a common thread woven into their very souls, understanding without words, but through shared experience a bond as natural to them both, and etched deep within hearts beating under the steady rhythm against life's tumultuous waves, like sailors navigating stormy seas, guided only by stars above. For in these moments, beneath that ancient olive tree, Elora and Penelope discovered not just strength of spirit, but also an unspoken promise to carry forward tales shared under its watchful ire, pact forged from their intertwined histories with each other, a commitment rooted within them like those roots encircling the base of this guardian tree that had borne witness to countless such gatherings over centuries. The night deepened around them, and stars began to twinkle brighter as dawn's first light approached a new day on its horizon, promising yet another chapter in their shared journey through life's boundless seas, knowing that no matter how tumultuous the waters may become or stormy skies loom overhead, they would always find shelter beneath an olive tree, standing as silent sentinels against time's relentless march forward. And when it was finally time for them to part ways, for one must journey onward alone through life's winding paths, Elora and Penelope knew that though their footsteps may never cross again in this world, the stories shared underneath those ancient branches would forever remain imprinted upon each other's hearts like an indelible mark of love or testament to how bonds forged through mutual understanding can transcend time and space itself, a beacon amidst life's unpredictable tempests. As they turned towards homeward ways, the olive tree stood as patient as Elora's steps carried her away from Penelope's last embrace. She looked back once more at their parting, her tableau frozen in time that seemed as eternal and comforting to the heart as the stars were no longer visible above them. The tree stood sentinel over this scene of bittersweet farewell. Its leaves rustled softly with secrets held between friends, echoes of promises made underneath a sky laden with stories yet untold. The olive grove had always been the backdrop for Elora, and Penelope's most profound moments stood thermoments that now seemed to slip through her fingers like golden sand as she prepared herself mentally, knowing well enough this chapter of their lives was nearing its end despite neither having spoken a word about it yet. It wasn't just the physical distance they would soon face, but also an emotional goodbye parting that came after years spent in each other's company and countless shared experiences underneath those wise, ancient branches of their guardian tree. Penelope turned her gaze towards Elora with a tender smile as she watched the silhouette blend into the distance. It was an image imprinted upon both hearts, or testament to friendships forged and weathered through life's tempests, yet unyielding in their core. The two friends had learned much from one another. Elora's pragmatic approach, tempered by Penelope's empathetic nature, allowed them a friendship that was as steadfast as the roots of the olive tree entwined beneath which they stood every day since childhood, and now it seemed their time together had reached its natural conclusion. The morning dew clung to Elora's cheeks like pearls worn in remembrance. She knew that even though her heart carried a part of Penelope within each beat, that bond would continue through the tales they'd shared, stories whispered on nights when shadows danced between leaves and hearts felt lighter with every recounting. These memories were not just footnotes in their history, but rather chapters that had woven themselves into her very being. Penelope's voice still echoes within the chambers of Elora's soul, a timbre intertwined with laughter and shared silences alike. As she took one last glance at the ancient guardian tree fair sanctuary, where they had first exchanged glances over playground shadows years ago, to now be their silent confidant in separation, Elora felt as though life itself was playing out a somber symphony, each note resonating with an unspoken love that transcended the physical presence. It wasn't merely about moving on or growing apart. It echoed a maturity and understanding of self-worth which had been cultivated in part by Penelope's gentle guidance during times when Elora felt as though she was adrift amongst life's myriad complexities, her anchor always the steadfast nature of their shared experiences. Their journey underneath those branches might have come to an end for now, but it didn't signify a severing. Rather, they knew that this tree and what it had witnessed between them would continue in silent homage, or living legacy borne upon the bark of each leafy sentinel. It was Penelope's wisdom on navigating life's unpredictable tempests which Elora held dearest. She carried those lessons forward, a lantern lighting her path as they diverged into new territories, each friend destined to seek out their own sunrises and stormy seas, yet never forgetting the lullabies sung under this very canopy of contemplation. Elora knew that no matter where life's currents might lead, she would find shelter in memories as reliable as these olive trees against time's relentless march forward, a constant reminder to embrace change while cherishing the past with reverence and gratitude for what had been given freely. As they went their separate ways, the two friends had stood here many times before, and this very day they would part ways for the first time since that fateful afternoon when Penelope imparted to Elora how one must navigate life's tempests with courage, resilience, and an open heart ready to embrace change while holding on to cherished memories. Now here she was Againer, solitary figure in this vast sea of green leads against which the world seemed muted, her friend's presence a comforting echo amidst life's relentless march forward, as they had always done beneath these sentinel branches that bore witness to their bond. Tonight Elora felt an uncharacteristic surge within her, desire not just for reflection, but also action, inspired by the silent homage paid daily in this living legacy of olive boughs and time-softened trunk, where they had shared countless stories beneath its sprawling embrace. And with that thought firmly rooted, Elora rose to her feet, stretching out muscles like she would any other day, but now carrying an invisible torch illuminating the path forward, a beacon of gratitude for Penelope's mentorship and friendship in navigating through life's unpredictable storms. Walking away from the comfort, Elora felt a sense of purpose blossom within her like night-blooming jasmine under moonlight, as she considered how to honor their shared past whilst still venturing toward new beginnings, or balance between cherished memories and embracing life's unfolding narrative. She knew that Penelope would understand, for in the end they were both seekers of sunrises, even if on diverging paths. She into realms where her artistic soul could sing freely while seeking to mend what had been broken. Penelope aimed toward healing others through words and wisdom. With a deep breath that tasted like spring rain, Elora began walking away from the familiar shade of their meeting point underneath those benevolent trees, as if she were leaving her childhood home for distant lands, where dreams took form in every corner, a journey punctuated by heartfelt goodbyes and promises to write letters that would be sealed with wax sent across oceans. Her steps carried the weight of decisions yet made, each one a note within an unwritten symphony destined for stages beyond their shared grove, where they at once found solace together as friends turned confidantes through trials and triumphs alike, a testament to life's unfathomable depth when viewed from the vantage point of change. As she reached her modest cottage nestled on a gentle hill, Elora paused at its entrance, where ivy wound around weathered stone like loving embraces that time itself seemed unwilling or unable to reciprocate her symbolic gesture by nature's hand for the enduring friendships humans could cultivate. She stepped inside with heartstrings tethered between here and there, pondering her next chapter in a world where every ending is but an overture of something new. She would continue Penelope's legacy within herself as both teacher and student to all those souls who found themselves adrift amidst life's myriad complexities. Elora sat down at her wooden desk, lit by the amber glow from a single candle that flickered against parchment, or sacred space where dreamscapes could be born into existence, as she transcribed memories to form letters of profound affection and wisdom for Penelope. With ink flowing like rivers of time on paper, Elora wove tales of their shared journey beneath those protective boughs, while also narrating her own pilgrimage forward, a dual odyssey that would soon find its echoes within the hearts she aimed to touch and comfort with kindness. The night deepened into a serene lullaby as Elora sealed each letter, feeling an unspoken agreement between herself and Penelope about how their paths might cross agate or future rendezvous, written in invisible script, where time would serve as Elora had inherited Penelope's pen, a gift that now seemed as much an extension of herself as it did the woman whose spirit resonated within its neighbor soulmate across dimensions and epochs, bound by shared experiences whispered in letters to souls yet born into this world. It was her quiet rebellion against time's relentless march, a pact with Penelope that transcended mortality itself. In our friendship, Elora wrote as if the words themselves were woven from air and stardust, we found solace in shared moments of joy. In her laughter I learned to dance amidst sorrows. Within each tear shed together, wisdom blossomed a testament that even sorrow holds its own kind of beauty. The candlelight flickered as if casting shadows from the past onto walls adorned with photos and mementos. Alora's gaze fell upon a sepia-toned photograph perched atop her bookshelf. 2 girls, their eyes gleaming brightly beneath flowing hair that seemed to capture eternity itself within its curls. It was Penelope as she once stood here, the embodiment of courage in an uncharted world where time's current had yet to run cold against her youthful spirit's warmth. A vision Alora held close during moments when reality seemed too weighty for delicate shoulders alone to bear. As night deepened its embrace around them, the clock chimed a hymn of serenity that blanketed every corner with comforting silence punctuated by only their breaths and whisked quiet turning pages. Her symphony composed solely within these 4 walls where Alora felt most alive. And it was here she continued to compose her letters, each one more intimate than the last, as if imbuing them with echoes of memories that pulsed in time's tender embrace. My dear Penelope, she began a letter dated from an era when their laughter rang clear under starlit skies and hopes were boundless. I find myself ensconced within the twilight years, yet imbued with youthful heart. In each word I write to you now, let us traverse those days, towed for when our souls danced in harmony like melodious chords upon a celestial harp. Alora's quill paused as she recalled how they stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the protective boughs of an ancient oak tree, their silhouettes intertwined against a canvas of twilight hues. It was here that Penelope had taught her to listen for time's wisps, how history's heartbeat pulsed in every rustle and sigh within the leaves above them as they exchanged dreams beneath its watchful gaze. And what of our future, dearest friend? She continued with a gentle smile ghosting across her lips. Our paths remain intertwined like those trees rooted in shared soil, but reaching ever upwards to horizons unseen. As the night deepened and Alora's thoughts wove through tales of yesteryears, she penned an invitation into existence for Penelope herself. Should time's embrace bring us back together once more, we shall convene beneath that very tree a reunion to celebrate our journey beyond the veil. Until then, may you find echoes of me in every sunrise and solace amidst life's labyrinthine turns. With a sigh as soft as falling dusk upon ancient stonework, Alora sealed her letter. Her heartbeats synced with those who had traversed time alongside Penelope. And within the depth of night's lullaby lay dreamscapes born from ink and affection that promised to touch others when they were adrift amidst life's complexities. In every soul I encounter, may you find a piece of my journey with our dear friend or beacon guiding toward understanding. For though time has frayed the threads binding us here, its loom continues, we dearest friend. Alora whispered the words as if they were a sacred incantation to summon forth her confidante. Our paths may diverge under this moonlit sky, yet are forever bound by invisible threads of shared history and love. She could see Penelope's visage upon these memories like an eternal companion, in every leaf rustle within the old oak tree where they had first met, her silent witness to their laughter, tears, and whispered secrets. Alora traced her fingers along the lines of faded ink on parchment as she wrote with a quill that seemed too delicate for such an endeavor. If stars align once more beyond this temporal divide, let us meet again beneath its wise canopy. The oak tree stood guardian over their shared dreams and fiercer, steadfast ally in the seasons of life they had navigated as companions. The clock's ticking seemed to synchronize with her heartbeat now. Every moment felt like a step further from Penelope, yet closer within this story she wove by moonlight's graceful luminescence our narrative not just of loss, but also the promise and hope that remained. With each sentence scribed onto paper as if to imbue it with life itself, Alora felt a serene sense of completion in her letter's purpose. She had set forth an invitation into existence for Penelope herself for reunion, not just under their beloved oak, but within the boundless realm where time held no reign. May you find echoes, Alora mused, of me as I am today in every sunrise and solace amidst life's labyrinthine turns. Time had indeed frayed some threads between the mad testament to its merciless march that claimed the vibrant vitality of youth. Yet within her words lay a plea for understanding, an invitation not just across distance but through years' worth of experiences, as they would have shared if fate's hand hadn't intervened with different designs in mind in acknowledgment of their individual journeys that had unfolded since then and the wisdom those paths imparted. As she sealed her letter, Elora felt a kinship not just to Penelope, but also to every soul who encountered herself through this written word. It was as if each person holding this note would find within its lines an echo of shared humanity or connection that transcended the mere passage of time. This story she etched into existence, born from ink and affection on paper now resting gently between her fingers, like a talisman against life's complexities, was not just for Penelope but also became part of something greater. It promised to touch lives beyond their own, a legacy that would persist even as the oak tree stood still. Within Elora's heart bloomed an understanding more profound than any she had ever known before. Though time may sever bonds, its essence remains a thread linking every soul through shared experience and emotion. It is this commonality of human spirit that endures beyond the tangible touch or spoken word. The night whispered secrets as Elora listened to leaves rustle like soft laughter, a symphony accompanying her soliloquy in script, a lullaby for dreams not yet realized but always possible within this world of wonder and woe. She allowed herself the luxury that only those who have loved deeply can afford. She could live these moments anew each night when they blossomed into memories once more beneath her eyelids, as if Penelope's presence was a constant companion, guiding through life treacherous turns and unforeseen byways. As sleep claimed its due place in Elora's being, her gentle hand lifting the veil between waking consciousness and dreaming realms, found comfort not just within her own heart, but also carried forward a piece of their shared past, as an ember to warm future encounters with souls who might find themselves adrift amidst life's complexities. The finality she, as Elora lay in her bed that night, she pondered over Penelope's enigmatic smile and warm presence which often accompanied her as they wandered through life, towed forever now when he was a memory alone to cherish. The last time they had spoken it seemed an eternity ago, yet here in this quiet moment of solitude the echoes fell almost immediate within Elora's chest, where Penelope's essence lingered like dew on dawn-kissed grass. She closed her eyes and let herself be cradled by those memorous moments so vivid they blurred into one another, a kaleidoscope of shared experiences that had colored their lives together in hues both bright and somber. Elora could feel Penelope's laughter echoing through the chambers of her heart, as if he were still by her side. She would often hear it when no sound was present, but felt an invisible thread connecting them across time, woven from their shared joys and sorrows alike, a tapestry that depicted a life well lived. With each recollected smile of Penelope's, Elora imagined his voice in her mind's ear as if it never ceased to exist. She could hear him recount their adventures with the same spirited eloquence they had once shared together by firelight. They spoke often about how time was an unreliable guardian of love's sanctity. Yet, through all its trials and tribulations, through wars fought in silence or passions buried beneath dust-laden tomes, unforgotten shelves, their bond remained intact as a single entity within Elora's heart. Elora knew that their farewell was not an end, but the beginning of new journeys for them both. Penelope's parting gift to her had been this understanding, etched deeply into her soul through every beat and sigh he shared with her while alive, a silent promise made under a sky dotted by constellations that mirrored their own intertwined spirits. Now, as she surrendered herself fully to the night's embrace, Elora felt his strength enveloping her once more. It was this courageous love which would carry them both into whatever lay ahead in life's unpredictable dance, a ballet performed on stages too vast for one lone dancer. Within these reflections of the past and present intertwined, Elora began to weave a narrative that transcended their shared history. She saw Penelope not just as an echo, but also as a guiding presence in her steps, her constant companion, whispering soft truths amidst life's cacophonous din. Each night was like flipping through the pages of this living storybook, where tales spun from threads silvered with moonlight, and hope would lull them both to peaceful slumber until morning's light beckoned anew their shared adventures in waking life as well. Even without words spoken aloud or hand held tightly on a journey through time's labyrinthine maze, Elora was reassured by the knowledge that they were never truly apart, for love is not bound to sight nor speech, but exists beyond these mere vessels. It breathes in each shared sigh and thrives within every heartbeat felt as one. As she drifted into dreams of tomorrows yet untasted, Elora let Penelope's spirit continue leading her through the twilight realms, where memories bloomed like night-blooming jasmine under starlight's watchful gaze, or sanctuary for souls adrift on life's relentless tides. And so, Elora found solace not just in remembrance, but also hope, even as the veil between yesterday and tomorrow thinned with each passing nightfall till it was nearly indiscernible. She felt a comforting certainty that love's essence remained evergreen amidst life's autumnal decay, or beacon of warmth against time's encroaching frost. In dreamscapes, where Penelope often visited as silhouettes cast by flickering candlelight, Elora would find herself laughing freely at jokes untold and sharing stories yet to unfold in her waking hours, her promise that their shared narrative was far from complete, but instead a prelude etched forever within the annals of an ever-unfolding story. As sleep claimed its due place in Elora's being, she allowed herself one last look backward, as if peering through time.